Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to this week's Weekly Energy Boost. My name is Elisheva, and I am here this morning with David, and we are talking about the invisible progress of life, just coming out of the month of Capricorn, which we started talking about spiritually hibernating and taking a break and stepping away from the external to do the more internal work. Now we're in the month of Aquarius, where it's very much an externally focused month, out of hibernation, busy planting seeds, making the effort that we need to. And the universe is really supporting us to be busy with that important work. Yet at the same time, we don't want to lose touch with the essential aspects of spiritual work that go unseen, that are not public, that are not meant to be public, and double down on that as to make the external work as efficient and as impactful as possible. Weekly Energy Boost is a 7-day spiritual weather forecast where we provide our listeners with the most powerful and practical tools to navigate the coming 7 days. We do that by gleaning through the wisdom of Kabbalah and sharing timeless tools, principles, and experiences, both from our own lives and the lives of the people that we worked with. And we end up sharing wisdom that you can use, tools that you can use any day of the year. And this is no different. It's really the universe reminding us this week, as busy as you are, as distracting as things can be, as demanding as life often is, don't forget that the real work is internal. And I think that's the best place for us to start this morning.
And I also want to share for all of our new listeners what the power of Kabbalah is and really what the history of Kabbalah is. That we are explaining this deep spiritual wisdom that existed thousands of years ago and began really with Abraham, the patriarch, kind of explaining the spiritual blueprint of the human soul and what is the purpose of this soul here in this world. So as we're learning these deep Kabbalistic concepts juxtaposed with what the energy of the week is. We want all of our listeners to be able to have the consciousness they need to understand the tests that they're going through, but also to pass those tests. Because the way that the human soul works is that the sages explain we don't actually have 100% of our soul, the full power of who we are inside of this body. We only receive a small piece of the soul. And the reason is because there's so much negativity in this world and so much negative consciousness attached to the body that if the full soul were to be revealed, it would be damaged. And so as we do spiritual work, as we break through our fears, as we let go and shed more of our shadows, or as what the Kabbalists call our tikkun, that which needs to be corrected, more of our soul is drawn into who we are. That comes with more divine inspiration, more wisdom, more certainty, more power, more strength, more wealth, more security. All of that will follow the drawing down of our soul from the upper worlds. So I want to just start with that. And so people really are aligned with
by the way,
energies.
That was definitely divinely inspired, because that process is also unseen. That's an invisible.
That's right.
I can't look at you and say, wow, David, you look at how
Look how big your soul's gotten.
Your aura is just out the room already.
Yes.
It really is one of those things that is so subtle to the five senses, but is really the purpose. And the paradox being, you can't see it.
Correct.
It's the purpose, and yet at the same time, it doesn't appear on a visible spectrum, and that's kind of what makes it difficult.
And if you think about it, everybody wants to be able to see, to understand, to know. When people are going through a difficult time, what do they want? They want to know, why am I going through this? When is this going to end? What's the purpose of all this pain? It's very hard for people to be in a state of confusion. It's very hard for people to accept the unknown or to accept the invisible. And we need to understand, well, why is it that the greatest Kabbalists relished in confusion? They relished in darkness. When darkness would come, the great Kabbalist Rav Yehuda Ashlag says this is the greatest moment of his life, when it's the most confusing. Because he knows that now, when things are confusing, it is shutting down the ego and allowing the soul to shine. This is why it's so hard for our body consciousness to accept confusion. We all just want to know. Tell me. What's the answer? We go to gurus. We listen to spiritual conversations because we want to know. But what if before you knew, you fully accepted the unknown? You fully accepted the invisible. You fully accepted the confusion. In fact, that is the way, after fully accepting the confusion, that you will then reveal the why and the knowledge. So instead of chasing to reveal the invisible, accept it completely.
Right. Most people would say seeing is believing, but the Kabbalah says believing is seeing.
Correct. And in fact, the Kabbalists were actually worried that now you know the technology, right? You know that if you can accept confusion, confusion goes away. Well, I started to love the confusion. And now all of a sudden I'm getting all these miracles and all these answers. That was actually the most difficult part of this, was that the confusion would eventually go away because what we're saying works. As soon as you fully accept, the confusion goes away and then miracles happen. And the Kabbalists like, oh, all these miracles. I was loving this state of confusion so much. And so that's the level of consciousness we want to get to, where we embrace confusion. And if anything, if the miracles happen or don't happen, that's just a cherry on top.
It's also, I think, part of what we find in nature that, right, our bodies are magical. I tell my kids all the time, our bodies are magical unicorns, so many different processes and things taking place in every second, but we don't see it. We don't see those things and we're not conscious of them, right? Even I had a funny thought when I was telling this to them, is like, imagine that our skin was transparent.
Yeah.
And you could see the blood pumping, the muscles contracting, at the rate kids grow, right? Imagine you could see the fibers and every stretching, right? What doubt would we have that there is a creator or that there is a force behind everything if you could see what happens inside a plant or a tree or a star, right? How could we doubt? But that's part of the reason that there is that invisibility of the magic in this universe, is we have to choose to acknowledge it even though we can't see it or feel it in the moment. And that's, to me, especially in the last year, that's been a big part of my own effort personally, is I know intellectually that the light is there. I know that this is, the confusion is bringing me miracles, but how can I feel it and experience it now? Not just know it in my head, logically understand it, recall it from the past, but literally experience it in the moment. And that's, I think, another big gift of this month. And, depending on where you are in the world and what you have on your plate, it may be easier or harder for you to listen to tap into. But this is one of those months that the Kabbalists say, there's no limitations. The opposite, that there's limitations are removed in this month. It might show up next month. And to be able to aggrandize on that I may be pessimistic. I may see the glass half full. I may want to see the statistics and the proof and the evidence before making a move. This is not the month for that. This is the month to see the goal already manifest. This is the month to know that the impossible is possible, and that knowing is what makes it possible.
And here's the danger of keeping score. Everyone, when we get too transactional, we start to keep score, or we start to become too logical and think, well, I'll do this, but what's going to happen? And we try to anticipate the cause and effect of life. This is very paralyzing. And it totally sucks the light out of the situation, sucks the miracles out. How many of us, we know what the next move is we need to make, but we're overthinking the second, third, fourth, fifth move after that. And as a result, it all becomes like a jumble of confusion, and we end up not making that first step. I'm always sharing with people, the Creator is revealing to you today what you need to do today. If you try to anticipate what's going to happen after that, then you are doing the Creator's job. Allow the Creator to do His job, and you to be the vessel that receives that wisdom and acts on it on a daily basis. Trust that the process will take you where you need to go. If you are trying to micromanage your process, you never even begin your process. And that's something really important for all of us. It says, like in the Bible, the Bible stories, they have so much depth to them because Kabbalah is actually the fourth layer of the secrets of the Bible. And it just decodifies and unravels all of the energy behind what the stories, which are often very confusing and complex, really mean practically in our lives. So one of the stories of the Bible is that it says that manna would fall from the sky. Manna was like a type of spiritual food. It would fall from the sky every day just for the food of that day. And the Israelites in the story would have to trust that the food was coming down that day. And it did. However, when insecurity and fear set in, sometimes they would say, well, you know what? Let me collect enough manna today for tomorrow, just in case it doesn't fall. You know, who knows? Like it's a miracle it came today, but what if it doesn't come tomorrow? And it says that whoever hoarded manna for more than one day's worth, all of that food became rotten. Just to show that when we are trying to plan ahead, when we out of fear and insecurity, and we're trying to overthink.
Saving for a rainy day versus saving for expansion and growth.
Correct.
Right? There's nothing wrong with saving.
There's nothing wrong. In fact, we encourage people to save, right? Not live paycheck to paycheck, right?
Right, but it's the intention behind why am I saving that changes my relationship with what I'm saving.
Correct. So if we're overthinking and over-planning, we are actually causing the process to be at a standstill and we're not moving forward.
One of the beautiful side stories to that story is that for the people that had that perfect certainty and trust, the manna would fall right outside their tent, like the milkman who used to drop off the bottles of milk fresh on the doorstep. For people who were hopeful that it was going to happen, they had to walk down, find it in the forest. And for those people that couldn't believe, couldn't accept that these miracles were happening, they literally had to hunt for their manna. So the thing I love about that dimension to the story is that certainty is something we're always working on, right? Being hopeful, right? Our teacher, Rav Berg, didn't like the word hope. Hope is important, I think, especially as the world transforms and evolves. It is important to stay hopeful and optimistic and have a positive outlook, but hope is not certainty, right? Seeing something happening and not believing it, or thinking it's too good to be true, like taking the manna, but thinking, wow, well, this can't last. That's also not certainty. So really the beauty of this teaching, this understanding is the opportunity for me to check myself. Where do I stand on the certainty continuum? And what does my next level look like? Because my next level means I will experience more blessings. It's not a contest or a game to play. It literally changes the quality of your life. So you may still earn the same amount of money or manna, however you want to call it, but how it comes to you can change based upon where your certainty is.
I love that. What are the common challenges that you're seeing people are going through right now? And what is it that they need to be keeping in mind?
It's such a beautiful question. I've been speaking to different people over the last couple of weeks who, in the face of everything that's happening in the world, feel guilty for having blessings.
Oh, that's a good one.
That they're afraid almost to acknowledge and appreciate the goodness they have in their life because there's so much badness out there. And going through the holiday season, right? With that like behind us. It's
like a survivor's guilt, but of blessings.
Exactly. That it feels bad that I feel good now.
Right. We've become so conditioned to being under a state of stress and pressure. Peacefulness actually feels quite unnerving. Right.
Or even that in order to be taken seriously, you have to be struggling. You have to be stretched.
That's
right? Stretched.
You're more authentic when you're struggling.
And if you're stretched, you're a human being. If you're okay, or it's sort of
you're arrogant.
Right.
In fact.
I think that's what it is. And the question or the confusion that these people were sharing with me, or what I'm picking up from all these stories, is I don't even know if somebody asks me how am I doing, how do I respond to that? I just landed this huge deal that I've been working on for years. Forget about what happened in the last 6 months, years. And I want to celebrate, but how can I celebrate with what's going on? Who can I share it with? How can I live my life without being in hiding of all of my blessings?
You know what? What's one way I tell people this is how you can become successful and wealthy is by blessing rich people. It's very interesting because our nature is when someone starts to have a lot or have more than us, we subconsciously want to tear them down. We subconsciously want to see them equalized to us because we don't like seeing people thrive when we're not thriving or thrive more than us because it indicates something's wrong with us. Our ego can't handle it. So we kind of have a little bit of a smile, internal smile when we see other people suffer. But if you bless rich people, if you bless poor people and rich people, you will then be blessed as well. It's a huge secret because our default is not to do that. So why does he need to be blessed? He has enough, right? I need to be blessed. But it's exactly this consciousness that is super reactive. When you bless a rich person, it's not that you're basically saying, oh, he should have more, she should have more. You're basically saying, I am aligned with whatever the creator wants. If the creator is bestowing wealth on someone or not, like I'm just aligned. I bless everyone equally. I am the creator myself. And this frequency is then what aligns you with prosperity. It's what aligns you with love. But if you see people in relationships that are happy, you bless them. So in fact, it's the people who have the most that you need to pray for the most, interestingly enough. And that is what elevates your vibration to be able to receive more. Everyone loves praying for people who don't have, but that's just because we feel guilty and sad and we feel we're being productive. Well, why don't you pray for the ones who do have? What I loved about the Pope is that everywhere he went, he said, pray for me, right? It's interesting. You're the Pope. You should be praying for us. He's asking people to pray for him, right? Because he understands the secret. He understands when you pray for him, you're praying for him as a conduit of energy, and then you become aligned with that conduit of energy as well.
So how do you know when it is okay to share what you're blessed by? Are? Yeah. Is it ever okay? And if it is, when? Or I even feel like there's tension among family members that almost it's like if you don't share it, you're hiding it. And if you do share it, you're bragging, like lose.
I've shared a lot of content about, in general, it is good for all of us in the beginning to prosper in silence because people, unfortunately, don't have the right consciousness, don't really know about the value of blessing us. And at the seed level of everything, when it's in its embryonic state, is when it's most vulnerable to people's consciousness. So I've learned in general, do as much as you can for as long as you can. Eventually, everything will be revealed, but at least you know that you're not trying to show it off, but also to use it to gain respect or to gain identity. So much of our identity is connected to our success, whether we're conscious of it or not. And to the extent that your success determines your identity is to the extent your success will be diminished. Because your identity needs to be purely your relationship with the light of the creator, not because of who you are or what other people say about you or what you have or don't have. And so, this is something I wish we were all taught in school, that as we all become more successful, we have to make a concerted effort to make sure that this success is not either adding or diminishing who I am. Who I am is who I am. End of story. Do not let those things determine that. And to that extent, your wealth will grow and your fame will grow and your love will grow. But if you're using it, you're depleting it.
Okay, I'm going to ask you the opposite or the reverse of that question. How do you know when to share your struggles and when to keep them private?
It's also a question I ask myself all the time. In general, I've learned to, for educational purposes, like let's say in a class, sharing stories from the past, right, where you've either failed or succeeded, but it's past, is different than sharing things that are happening in real time. If it's truly for educational purposes, share stuff from the past because it's already a closed energy. People can't affect the past. It's almost like, when somebody dies, like they stop hating them, right? If there's somebody that's being vilified and protested against, and then they die, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, well, he was actually a pretty good guy, right? So it's less. because it's a closed energy, so people feel less heated to try to destroy this person. So I think I personally like to share things from the past. I think things that are present, you have to be very careful about, and only share with those that you trust in a trustworthy circle. And that could be really just 1-2 people max.
So the
good and the bad, the blessings, all of that stuff.
So I'm thinking about someone in specific that it's even hard for her to admit she's struggling. And her question to me was, I'm asking you for help. By asking for help, am I hurting my process or helping my process?
Asking you specifically? Mm-hmm. So you're different.
Meaning but the question was less, she knows she's going to get help from me, that I'm in her life as a helper. Yep. Is she making her circumstance worse by reaching out?
I would say that everyone needs to know that a spiritual mentor or a therapist, like, this is a safe energetic space where if we're overthinking and overcalculating what we're saying, we're actually hurting ourselves. Even if I always tell my students, even if you sound like a victim, even if you sound like, just share it. Like, don't overthink. Sometimes people want to share something that's going on in their life. They're like, I don't want to speak evil speech, so I shouldn't tell you this. I'm like, well, don't worry. This is a safe space. I know your intention isn't to speak evil speech. Try not to embellish. Be accurate, because that's a big thing about evil speech is people embellish, right? They throw their emotion into the words, right? They say, that was the worst worst restaurant I ever went to. Well, it's not really the worst you've ever been to. You just had a bad experience. They brought you cold soup. So just say I went and I had cold soup. You don't have to say this was the worst restaurant ever. That would be evil speech. So anyways, I tell people, you have a safe space to speak. And we all need to feel safe speaking to people that we are designating to be channels for us.
Okay. So here's where that gets tricky. And I'm not saying I know the answer. This is a really genuine something I'm trying to navigate on my own. A person is going through a challenge. We talk almost in every episode about how it's a blessing. Challenges are blessing. They're there for us to grow, to transform, to reveal the next level. We're always hyping up the challenges. And I'm keeping that mental discipline of it's all for the good, it's all for the good, it's all for the good.
Yep.
The moment I turn to my mentor, my teacher, my therapist, and I say, I'm struggling.
This sucks. It's not for the good.
Yeah. Am I saying, have I shifted out of it's all for the best to this is horrible?
It's a sliding scale. So what you would be telling your teacher is, hey, look, I'm doing my best to see that it's for the good. I'm not there yet. I want to be there. This is great because we are all human and we all go through a process. No one is already there yet. Right. In fact, 99% of the time, you're not there yet. You're on your way there, which is kind of interesting when you really think about it. You're only there when you're there. Being in the 1 yard line or the 50-yard line or the 30-yard line, still 0 points. It doesn't matter. Until you get to the end zone, you're not getting any points. So the idea is we're always progressing there. How you know you've achieved it is when it's no longer bothering you and there's an elevation that happens. Rav Ashek says, you know you've changed to a new person if you can look back at the old person and be like, well, that was so silly. Who I was. I don't remember that person. That's how you know you've shifted to a new soul, a new level of consciousness.
Okay. So you bring up something on a very deep level that I think a lot of people are struggling with now when it comes to what do I show, what do I hide, is in relationships. It's really important. I think it's one of the 5 basic needs in a relationship, or not the basic human needs, but needs in relationships, to be appreciated, to be acknowledged. And at the same time, here we are always preaching, don't do it for the recognition, don't do it for acknowledgement, don't do it to get credit. Actually do the opposite. Try not to get credit for it. But if you get into much of a habit of not getting credit for it, there may be a space in the relationship because you're missing that
intimacy,
that connection of being seen.
Correct. So basically what you're saying is if I remove all my neediness and all my desire to be seen, well, then in my relationship, I'll be very sterile. It's almost like we'll just be like 2 ships in the night because I don't need you, you don't need me. What's the big deal? Right?
That's exactly what I'm asking.
Yeah. This is the kind of conversation people usually have when they're trying to already predict like 17, 18 steps down the line of what's going to happen when I get so spiritual. Like you tell the number one thing, like when you tell people to accept their situation and feel full, not feel lack, everybody freaks out and says, well, if I don't feel lack, I'm not going to want to do anything. I might as well just die. Because everyone associates the will to succeed is only aligned with the lack they've always felt their whole life, right? They were deprived of something when they were young, so they swore never to be that way again, or they saw their parents lose all their money and it was hell, so they said, I'm never going to face that situation again. I'm going to go out there and be successful. So the lack is motivating the work. People are so afraid, take that lack away, change it to abundance, then they'll feel like they don't even want to get out of bed and they'll just be depressed.
Where's the drive if you don't have the goal?
Right. And what the Kabbalists explain is don't overthink that. When you transform your lack to abundance, the Creator will give you a new soul that has a new desire, because there are people in the world who work very hard, but not from a place of lack, from a place of desire. It's different. It's from a place of abundance. It's from a place of they're having fun now. Right? How great would it be if you're working to make money or if you're working to reveal money? Two different types of consciousness. And you see this with people who are maybe on their second or third or fourth company. It becomes a little more fun. It becomes more about the people. It becomes more about the product. It becomes less about the profit, let's say, in most cases, because they've already taken care of themselves, so the lack isn't there so much anymore. Can you get there even on your first company? Can you get there when you actually feel the lack and transform the lack to abundance on command? Not wait for some revelation to happen to fulfill your lack. That doesn't actually get rid of the lack. It just temporarily soothes it. It's kind of like taking an Advil. It knocks down your temperature, but it's not actually solving the sickness. It's solving the symptoms.
And so how do you translate that into a relationship? I get it with the money. What does it look like in a relationship?
When people are working on themselves and they're coming from more of a place of wholeness, they will actually begin to have a deeper connection and a deeper respect for the other person, because there's a whole new channel that opens up in the way you communicate, in the way you love, in the way you experience. Codependent relationships where you're constantly depending on the other person for security, for approval, and maybe you've overcome it with everybody else, but with this person, you're constantly looking for it. It's still feeding some virus inside of us. And as a result, we're more reactive than proactive in our relationship with them. We call that depth, but there's a toxic side to that.
Right. So it's important to have that one person that you can be truly vulnerable with and expose the work and the struggle. I think whether you're talking about your partner or a teacher or a therapist, right? It's like, as long as you have that one person to be fully you, without the calculations, without worrying, without how do I look or how do I sound, you're already on the right track.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I'm excited for everyone to go into this week ready to do the work, not looking at who's watching, and at the same time being motivated by the fact that how I look at things is actually, and how I experience things is actually determining what the next step and the next step and the next step is. That's one of the reasons we always, in the beginning of the year, offer Kabbalah 1, like David was talking about in the beginning of the episode. The whole idea is to create that space where you can master yourself and receive more and more of your soul on a consistent basis, not in a reactive, desperate, needy basis. So we want to make sure everyone knows, wherever you live, wherever you're listening, whatever your language is, we have a level 1 course starting soon near you. We always also have the on-demand course, but January is the time of New Year's resolutions and starting fresh. So we want to invite everybody to visit weeklyenergyboost.com. The link right at the top of the page this week is going to take you to a list of all of the courses we're offering all over the world that you can start your journey if you have not yet. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, you can send us a message right there on weeklyenergyboost.com, as well as donate to support the podcast. You can find our archives there. You can also follow us on Facebook or Instagram to receive even more content, clips from the show, more ideas supporting what we talk about on every episode. And as always, the best thing that you can do is rate us, review us, and of course, share this episode. It's important that more people every week are doing this work. That's why we do the podcast. And we'll see you next week on Weekly Energy Boost.